I mean, for like everyday kind of cases, like a woman come to you at the menopause, I don't know, and she just wanna improve some hormones and maybe get in better shape, like, or so you will suggest it to her, and it's the same way as you will tell to a adolescent, maybe with some protein adjustments, or like a young guy. I mean, that's your kind of a way to go.
Yeah, so I think that this is appropriate, and not only appropriate but optimal for every single human being on Earth at any stage of their life. And that's just simply coming from a biological standpoint that apart from weaned individuals, right? If you're on breast milk, you need to be on breast milk for a certain amount of time. Once you come off of that, look at every mammal on Earth. When they stop breastfeeding, they start eating the food that the adults eat, and all of the adults and children that are weaned eat the exact same thing, right? They're all eating. Elephants are all eating the same thing. Lions are all eating the same thing. Chimpanzees, they're all eating the same thing. Maybe there's a bit of variation here and there, because actually some, more and more chimpanzees are hunting, and certain chimpanzees in certain areas are hunting more, and eating other chimpanzees, eating other monkeys, or eating monkeys. And dolphins, they're eating the same thing, right? So whales, they're eating the same thing. So this is what we should be doing too. We don't have multiple stages of what we should do, and at this period in these circumstances we should be eating X, and this period in these circumstances we should be eating Y. That only applies to breast milk and then post weaning meals. And so someone who's a child who's growing, they need to be on fatty meat, because that's going to be the best nutrition for them, for their brain and their bodies to develop. We actually, our brains have been growing over the last sort of 8 million years, and pretty steadily for about 6 million of those years. And then about 2 million years ago, it sharply increases, almost like an exponential growth. It's the fastest growth in brain size of anything we've ever seen in the fossil record. And so there's this exponential growth up to where we are today. And then when you right around the agricultural revolution, there's a sharp jag down, like literally straight down. And we lost 11% of our cranial capacity, of our brain size, since the agricultural revolution, right? So really about 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, our brains were 11% larger on average than they are now.
That's
right?
crazy.
That is crazy, right? So we think we're so smart, we're so this, all those backwards people, this, that, and the other. We have more technology. They were smarter. The ones that could actually eat meat. A lot of the peasants and things like that, they weren't able to afford meat. They were poor. And so that's why they were pretty unhealthy. But the nobility, the top classes, they knew how important meat was, and they would get a lot of that. But that was still in past agricultural. But like the caveman days, they were much smarter. They had much more capacity for learning and thought than we did. We just know more, right? But they could do more with much less. And that's something that we can get back. There are some epigenetic changes and things like that. There was an experiment with Dr. Pottenger back in, I think, the 20s and 30s. And he did this with cats, and he found that just feeding them raw meat versus cooked meat.
Yeah, I know. Pottenger, right?
Yeah, Pottenger. Yeah, oh, have you seen his stuff?
I know.
Yeah,
I read his stuff.
Really good. So yeah, very, very interesting. So for people who don't know, he just looked at this for cooked and versus uncooked. And he found that the uncooked, the raw meat, was much better for them, and they're much healthier generationally, and they were very, very healthy generation after generation. They were getting fully formed skulls and zygomatic hearts, which is cheekbones, and brains and body size. And that the cooked meat group, it wasn't even like the plant-based kibble nonsense that we feed them now, but just meat, but just cooked meat. They were less healthy. They were less interested in mating and reproduction, and and then the next generation, they were actually smaller. Their brains were smaller. Their zygomatic arch wasn't fully developed. Their bone mineral
after one
density,
generation, right?
One generation, yeah, and one generation, their bone mineral density went from 14% down to 7%, so it halved. Right, so that's quite significant. They were even less interested in mating and normal behavior. They weren't as active and playful. They were smaller as well. And then the third generation, they were even smaller brains, even less developed facial features, and even small, and their bone mineral density went down to 3%. So it was actually soft. Their bones were soft, and they said it was like this consistency of like a foam rubber sort of thing, which is just terrible to think about. And they were getting all these fractures and things like that. So it was this knock-on effect generation after generation, and they found that after 3 generations they couldn't reproduce. Right, so they either couldn't they couldn't conceive in the first place, or if they did, they couldn't bring them to term, or they were stillborn. They didn't get a single live 4th generation cat. And then they flipped it back and said, okay, well, can we reverse this? Start giving those 3rd generation cats raw meat and see how they go. And they were able to breed them back to the fully developed, bigger brain, better developed facial features and all the other characteristics of the raw meat cats. They were able to do that, but it took 4 generations. So there's these epigenetic effects. There's these signals that tell your DNA which genes to turn on and off, right? So it's not just like you have these genes, you don't have these genes. You need to tell them to turn on and off at different times. So that's epigenetics. And so you're getting these signals, and that can actually have knock-on effects generationally, right? So it's not just you go back to doing the right thing and everything's okay. No, actually. So, even us that we're now carnivores, we're probably not going to be as benefited by that as our children will be if they're raised as full carnivores and develop as full carnivores. And they won't be as good as their children, and probably their children, but they will be a lot better off. And
they will be from day one also.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually, I know a lot of Pottenger's work, and a lot of the things that you say, I wanted to tell you a couple of minutes ago that it really correlates with Pottenger and his kind of a teacher, Dr. Weston A. Price. That for me, Dr. Weston A. Price, that's a real science. Like, it's not like today, you have a lot of RCT and people, they want to say RCT like to kind of like tell you, okay, shut up, I have an RCT to show a different thing, but they don't really check who gave the money for that, for this RCT or another one. And Dr. Weston A. Price and also Pottenger, it was like that's real science. It's like they go and they observe. That's the best science I think there is. And like Dr. Weston A. Price, he said that with, as you said, for women that after birth, that when they breastfeed, so there used to be like a whole protocol in the tribes that they actually breastfeed, and then the woman, they get the most nutrient dense food in the tribe, and then when they finish, the child immediately get on again, like the child that finished breastfeed, so he will get the most nutrient dense food, and everything was going towards him, like all the resources of the tribe, like for nutrition wise. So and that makes a lot of sense.
It does, yeah. Especially because when you're at extremes of age, you really need the most help, right? So when you're developing and you're very young, you really need a lot of you need the top nutrition. When you're getting older and your body's not as robust and capable of dealing with stress, then you also need that as well. And so, yeah, that's the thing. I think that is real science as well. You're looking at real world results, right? You're not having a theory. You have 13 people and 7 people, and you sort of look at this and you just make all these conclusions that may not be borne out statistically, with your data set. But it doesn't matter either way. They can have all the RCTs that they want. They can have all the studies that they want, all the epidemiological, surveys of health and things like that they want. But what matters is what happens in the real world, right? And so, observing that, saying, okay, these people are doing this, and what are they doing? Okay, it's going exactly the opposite of what you suggested. Okay, so that's wrong, right? And that's
exactly
that's what the physicist Richard Feynman said famously, is that it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. Okay, and so they're saying it's like, oh well, no, this wouldn't happen, and it's all so much better to have plant this and this, that, and the other. And then you have Weston Price go down there on the ground, seeing this in real time, seeing the exact opposite. It's wrong, and so that's just all there is. And
that's real science.
It is, yeah, and people hang their hats on the RCTs. Oh, where's the randomized control trial? And that's fine. When you're looking at different sorts of studies, you have some sort of epidemiological survey, or you have, a properly controlled, randomized controlled trial with enough numbers and it's well done and performed, yeah, I'm going to take the RCT over the survey any day, right?
True.
But there is evidence that exists outside of the randomized controlled diet, right? This is something that was actually demonstrated to us in medical school, saying that, hey, look, RCTs are great and all, but they're not the only thing out there. You can't just live your life on RCTs. Famous example of that is parachutes, right? There's no RCTs to show that parachutes work. Okay, there is no evidence that parachutes work then, right? Well, no, like we have evidence because we have eyes and we're not stupid. So so because there's no randomized controlled trial that shows that parachutes work, are you going to not use a parachute because there's just no high level evidence to show that parachutes work? Well, my eyes are pretty high level evidence, and I can see that it works, and I can see the alternative.
Exactly.
And, but if they want to sign up for RCT, for parachute, maybe get a dud parachute. I mean, they're welcome to do that, but I think I'll just use parachutes.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's exactly that. That's what sometimes bothers me. I soon to be a nutrition clinical nutritionist, and of course my studies and all, they are based a lot of RCTs. But sometimes when I get to an RCT that it doesn't correlate with what I do, and like I can prove it by just people can come to see me at my office or like at my everyday work and I think also Dr. Bernstein also proved it a lot, the type 1 diabetic that is now 89 almost years old, that he still works and all. And he also, most of the RCTs today, and the trials will say that he should have died like when he was 30, and now he's 89, living a low carb diet for, I don't know, 60 years or something like that. And many times I see it also, like I had an argument with someone from class, like people got to my Instagram and all, and they start to argue about artificial sweeteners, and like if they cause it's not for our subject, but if they cause reactive hypoglycemia or not. And they showed me like RCTs and all, and I told them, look, I've seen the studies, I know, but if you check my blood glucose, like before artificial sweetener and after, I will show you like reactive hypoglycemia. That it just, I will show you with your eyes. Like you don't need any study for that. And then
that's it. Yeah.
You can say to everyone, like also in your practice, like if some patient come to you and tell you, no, I'm not sure about the carnivore diet because there is this trial, but you tell him, okay, you can try 1 month and come back to me, and you will see yourself, like with time.
Well, that's it, and that's what Richard Feynman was getting at. That is just that we have this theory. Einstein did this as well. Like he would, think he would prove something mathematically. Say, okay, now let's go test it, because he always tested it, and that's the thing. There are a lot of people that think, oh, well, because this is the sort of the method that Einstein did. He would prove something mathematically, and then he'd go, but that's not it. He would actually go and he would look for evidence to test that against, right? And if it didn't match up with what he observed in the real world, he would throw it out because it was wrong, right? Because he had this and he proved it mathematically, and he's Albert Einstein, so this guy's pretty on top of things. But he was on top of things enough to recognize that if it didn't matter how beautiful his theory was and his math was, it's not lining up with reality. So it's wrong. And so, you don't know why. There's something else. He just doesn't know. There's something else going on here that's contributing to this that I'm unaware of. So, my math is incomplete, right? And so he was smart enough to be aware of that. Other people are not. Other people say, like, well, I proved this mathematically, therefore it's correct. It's like, well, but you're seeing the evidence against that. And then they'll come up with reasons as to why that's not the case. They make up fudge factors and things like that. And there's a lot of that in math and physics, but there's a lot more of it in medicine. And so, people just live and die by these studies, and they forget what is actually happening with an actual patient in the actual world. And that is the only thing that matters. And so, you having those experiences, you say, look, when I take this, this is what happens. And I have people tell me, like, coffee's not bad for you, it has all these good effects, there's all these studies. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And if you want to drink coffee, you can. But when I drink coffee, I have this effect. I get sore for 2 days. I don't want to be sore for 2 days, and that tells me that there's something going on causing inflammation in my body. And there are a lot of documented, well-known, and established plant defense chemicals in coffee. And so, that's going to be me. When I drink coffee, I feel worse. So I'm not going to drink coffee. And what this study says, like, okay, good for your study, but in real life, that's not the case. And I absolutely see patients in clinic who have constant glucose monitors. When they take in artificial sweeteners, it absolutely affects their blood sugar.
Exactly.